Okay, hi kids. I want to talk about the Unit 6 exam, which you took 2 Fridays ago. As always, you add your multiple choice score to your free response doubled, and that'll give you your total. Then you would divide that by the curve, which on this exam was kind of low, came down to a 36%, but I expected that. This is usually a difficult unit. So a few kids did exceptionally well, way over this curve. But anyway, the curve was 36. That's how you get your percentage on this exam. Something quirky that happened here, which has happened before, and which also happens on the AP test, is sometimes your free response question will have 11 points possible, but your maximum score is still a 10. So you basically have 11 ways to score a 10. And even if you got that 11th point, it is still just full credit. That's also on the College Board. So you always try to get all the parts of a question. And if you can answer one really well, you've kind of like bought yourself not knowing something later on the free response. You can still get a perfect score, even if you didn't know something, because you got an extra point somewhere else. So the 11 ways to earn 10 points thing. I want to remind you that you should always ignore the denominator. In NEO, there's a multiple choice column and a free response question column, and those are out of 100. So you're always going to have an F. If you got like a 40 out of 100, that would be impossibly high for multiple choice or free response, but that's still going to show you an F. That's because that's a fake, not part of your grade, does not affect your class grade. That's just a place where I get to record your multiple choice and free response scores. I've said this for the last 5 exams as well. Make sure that you just look at the total. It'll be multiple choice, free response, ignore, and then the one that matters is the exam total. I'm so sad that so many kids are cheating. Oh my God. I think we had to disqualify 7 students. That's bad. I gotta tell you, and a bunch of kids were right on the edge. So it looked like they cheated, and it wasn't quite certain enough to disqualify you, but it was enough that on the College Board they would probably go to a second set of assessment, and the College Board would have caught kids that I couldn't catch. You gotta really not look up answers on the internet. It's too obvious. All it takes is like 2 words in a particular order, and it can be enough to trigger something. Uh, it takes a lot of words in a particular order to actually get you disqualified, and a bunch of kids lit that up. You have to be really careful not to cheat. It's just not worth it. You know enough. Um, it doesn't take very much to pass. It's not worth cheating. Um, a lot of kids that probably would have had at least a 4 or a 5 or a 6 instead got a 0. You don't do that. For the rest of you who did a good job, by the way, great. I can see a lot of students are trying super hard, and that's always good. As a general rule, don't forget the corrections. I just did some of those corrections at like 1 a.m. last night. And there's kids who got like 10 points back in the corrections. That's a lot of points on an exam. Some kids went from like an F to a C or a B. Do the corrections. And specifically on this exam, there was a lot of math that I would have thought was pretty straightforward, stuff that we went over in class before, but that still seemed to be a challenge for my students. First of all, now that you know the right answer, you can talk to somebody else, work that out, turn in the corrections, so you can get those points, at least half those points back. Second of all, you should really practice this math, because there's a lot of examples year after year after year after year. They just change a couple of numbers, but they keep asking the same types of math. So please practice your math. Um, I've got a couple of points for you. Um, First of all, when you have a document-based question, don't spend a lot of time restating the question. If there's a story about how birds are driven to extinction because of human impact, you don't have to say all that. Usually the question is asking you to show you know something about that topic, not to just repeat the thing you just read. Like kids try to just, I don't know, I'll just re-say what I read. And in our answer key, we're not looking for restating it, we're looking for understanding it. So be careful not to just restate a passage. And don't make stuff up. A lot of kids reach. There was a few kids that were like, causes a hole in the ozone layer, or this gives you cancer. And like, that looks like you're just trying to find something that you can say, but always the content will refer to something in our class. Be very careful. A lot of kids confuse this. When they ask for an environmental benefit, that's not economics. So what's an environmental benefit to coal? It's not that it's cheap. That would be an economic benefit. Be very careful that when you describe cost or benefit, you use the right type, because they'll be looking for a specific type. They'll ask you for something environmental or economic. Also, speaking of economics, social benefit is sometimes difficult to explain in economics. Generally speaking, if Jose gets to get rich, that's not a social benefit. If fracking is very profitable for Jose, that's not a social benefit. If you can say economic growth creates many new jobs, now you've made that a social thing. If you can say Jose's wealth means that he'll pay more in taxes, which builds more roads, that's a social thing. If you can say that energy is cheaper, so people have more money to buy bread or to make other investments, that would be a social thing. But a lot of you have a accurate statement that fracking is very profitable, and that in and of itself is not a social benefit. If there was a market for selling babies, I could get rich. I know a lot of people with babies, but that's not a social benefit. So don't let fracking wealth be in and of itself the social benefit. You should describe how it benefits people at large. And as a hint, pretty much any time in the economy, two things that are very easy to talk about when there's any economics question on the AP exam: jobs, tax revenue. Those are two like Swiss Army knife answers for when the College Board is asking you about something economic. You got to be really careful not to be generic. If I were to ask a child on the street, what's a problem with this environmental thing? Any child could tell me, I don't know, pollution, it's worse for the environment, it's bad for ecosystems. Those are generic, non-specific answers that we specifically don't give points for. The generic stuff, it's not wrong, it just doesn't show that you know anything, because even a child would know that. Right? Like if I said, what's wrong with fracking? And you're like, I don't know, it causes pollution. Like that's what anybody on the street would know. That doesn't show that you've been in a college level class. If you're specific about the types of pollution, now you're getting somewhere. If you say bad for ecosystems, like I'll bet you I know 6, 7-year-olds that would say that. Like, can you show me how you understand the damage to ecosystems? Lowers productivity, prevents decomposition. Be careful not to give generic answers. They're not wrong. They're just not specific enough to show that you understand an issue. The really generic ones, which you'll probably never, ever, ever get credit for, are pollution. In and of itself, that word is not enough. Cleaner, like you have to be a little bit more specific than that. And bad for ecosystems or bad for life. That's just unfortunately too generic. Check out your exams, read the comments. I gave a lot of students comments. Some of them were important for you to know about regarding our plagiarism alarms. Do your corrections, practice your math. That math is going to be on the AP test again. If you got it wrong now, do the correction, you get at least half the credit back. That's a really good deal. And then practice that math. It'll be on the AP test. That's it. Okay, I'll see you back in class, I guess.